So I'm going to take us back a few years. I'm going to put AI in the context of, oh gosh, I guess now it's about 7 years. So this was me, 2015, hanging out with a couple presidents ago. I was a serial entrepreneur, giving rise to businesses around the country. And then this was me when I showed up on your TV screen-ish, around 2020. What happened? My wife asks all the time. How did the relatively normal guy in the previous slide come to this? And I was activated by Trump's victory in 2016, not to get too political, but I saw him as a massive red flag to economic trends that had been getting stronger and stronger. And I'm going to put AI in the context of these mega trends. So this isn't what you think of as AI, but it's certainly now AI enabled. This is the automation of car production. So for fun, what percentage of Americans graduate from college now? 60, 30, it's about 35%. The country's maybe 2/3 high school grads. And these are the top 5 jobs done by Americans, broadly speaking. So number 1's administrative, 2 is retail clerks, 3 is food prep and serving, 4 is truck driving, and then 5, believe it or not, is still manufacturing. So these 5 jobs comprise approximately 50% of the American workforce. And what we saw is an acceleration of getting rid of more and more of these jobs. So look at these top 5 again. Office and administrative support includes things like call centers. There are 2 million Americans who work at call centers right now. When do you think AI is going to be able to do that job? What day is it? Today's Monday. So let's say those 2 million call center workers all of a sudden show up and it's like, oh wow, my job got automated. That's an obvious one. By the way, these call center workers aren't unionized, so that's just going to happen very quickly. This was an estimate done by the Obama White House, and literally the last day they issued this report and said, hey, we're turning the lights off, giving it to Trump, and here's a report that we're going to automate away a whole lot of jobs. Good luck with this. You can look up the date on this. It's like end of December on their last day. So these are the white-collar jobs that people think of as being under threat. Some of these are more obvious to you than others. If you think about, again, this 1/3 of Americans who are college educated and then 2/3 non-college educated, most of you think of automation as afflicting the bottom 2/3. But it turns out that now with ChatGPT, a lot of it's repetitive white-collar work. How many of you run organizations? Let's try that. So if you run organizations, you're all thinking about this. You know what I mean, unfortunately, if you're running organizations, you're like, how can I get this done a little bit more efficiently? And then if someone from the press sticks a mic in your face and is like, what are you going to do with your workers? I'm like, oh, we'll find something else for them to do. But then internally, you're like, will we? Like, I don't know. Like, depends who they are and what's going on. So this is a picture, by the way, of a robot pharmacist. Good times. They don't make mistakes in the same way that a human would. So back to the original slide of the disappearing manufacturing workers for automobiles. This is manufacturing workers in the US over the last period. It went from, let's call it 17 million to about 12 million today. It's made a rebound, but as we're having this conversation, it's around 12 million. So that's 5 million manufacturing jobs disappear. And then you have all sorts of weird stuff happen in America. That happens in the exact same time frame, where our deaths of despair start spiking among middle-aged men in the Midwest in particular. Marriage rates collapse across most demographics, where today, and you can see all this happens at the same time as the loss of the 5 million manufacturing jobs. So today, about 41% of American kids are born to single moms. 90% of single parents are single moms. And the data shows that the little kids respond differently based on gender. If you are a little girl and you grow up to a single mom, you have a good role model, she's a superhero, and the outcomes are actually okay. If you're a little boy raised by the single mom, boys, it turns out, are more sensitive to parental time and input and the lack thereof. And so boys raised by single moms have higher incidence of behavioral problems, academic problems, and then struggle to graduate. How many of y'all are parents? I'm a parent. Yeah, me too. I've got 2 boys. Sometimes I show pictures of them because they're not very rugged. And I say, look, we have to keep our stuff together because they're going to fare very badly in a disintegrating Mad Max type environment. These are the 4 types of jobs in America, broadly speaking: non-repetitive, or non-routine cognitive, routine manual, and non-routine manual. So routine manual is the manufacturing workers. And you see that percentage is kind of flat, maybe trending slightly down. The one that should be of most interest to people is routine cognitive, which is the blue. Like, that's trending down too. So those are repetitive white-collar jobs. You can think of travel agents. Soon it'll be accountants, maybe some lawyers. Repetitive cognitive stuff is getting processed out. And then the growth areas are non-routine cognitive, and then to some extent, the non-routine manual is just sort of resilient. Non-routine manual is things like hotel room cleaning staff. That's actually very, very hard to automate. If you had to try and send in a robot to clean that room, it's a disaster. So non-routine manual doesn't mean expensive. Sometimes it can mean very, very inexpensive. And also your incentive to automate it is kind of low. So you introduce AI in, and you're going to see routine cognitive start to decline faster now that ChatGPT is here. What do y'all I'm going to stop here just for a sec. Is this new, interesting, fun? Yeah, it's good fun, right? So one of the byproducts of this is that our democracy is kind of fragmenting as a result of some of the things. And this is, again, what got me into this, where I decided to run for president. I have a confession to you all. I did not expect to be president. It's not like I'm all broken up right now. It's like, oh, I'm not president. Like, you know, I was trying to alert our society to the fact that we were in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of the world that's speeding up. And we need to engineer better solutions. Now, it turns out that our political system right now is not very interested in solutions. So I'm going to run another quiz on you all. What is the approval rating for US Congress as we're here together right now? Even pre-ousting. Because I literally saw one that was at 9% the other day. But generally speaking, it's 15 to 24% approval rate for Congress. What is the re-election rate for incumbent members? 94%. It's a better win rate than the Jordan-era Chicago Bulls or the Durant-era Golden State Warriors. So raise your hand again if you run a business. How would your customers feel if 4 out of 5 of them didn't like what you were doing and then you changed nothing? That's the way the American political system feels to most Americans, because they've been carved up into blue and red zones. Both parties really detest competing with each other. So the reason you have a 94% incumbent re-election rate is that 90% of the districts are now drawn to be either blue or red. And so you know you're not going to lose in the general. So in that system, how can you actually lose your job? Die is a possibility. A really bad scandal. You'd have to take it very, very far now in American life. The main way you can lose your job is to piss off the base. And the base comprises the 10% or so that votes in the primaries. So recently, 10 House Republicans voted to impeach Donald Trump after January 6th. How many of them made it back through their primaries? 2 out of 10. Of the 8 who did not make it back, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Peter Meyer, Anthony Gonzalez, some of the ones you think of as kind of the more reasonable ones. And the 2 that made it back, by the way, were in Washington State, where they had a top 2 primary and they were kind of insulated from this. If you had a genuine Republican primary and you voted to impeach Trump, you were out. So believe it or not, this is all related to AI. Big picture, what we're seeing is that you have a government system that is generally unresponsive and unrelated to anything that we're seeing. You have these completely disparate feedback mechanisms where it's like, hey, I don't like what's going on. It's like, well, nothing you can do. It's simmer down, simmer down. And 90% of the seats are determined by the 10% on either wing, which makes them not reflective of the average American voter. They're just reflective of whoever actually shows up and votes in these hyper-partisan primaries. What do you all think? Is this a reasonable summary? And then, by the way, not in the slides, you have media organizations separating us into teams and tribes, and then social media pouring gasoline on the whole thing, so that you have this giant polarized mess, as opposed to someone coming together in the middle. Now, what I determined during my presidential run was that in order to solve any of the big problems, including AI, since that's our topic, but I'm actually going to say you could put other things in there. Immigration you could put in there. You could put education in there. You could put a lot of things in there that right now our system will not solve because you have political figures that are off in the corners. And so the way to fix it is something that many of you have heard of and seen, is nonpartisan primaries and ranked choice voting, which is anyone can vote for anyone, and then you just sort it out via instant runoff. This is technology, believe it or not. This is, it's like a better way to choose our leaders. Right now, we're stuck in this very, very anachronistic, strange system, and it's going to destroy us. And it's going to let, in my opinion, AI run roughshod because our government leaders don't actually need to meaningfully respond in order to keep their jobs. There's no relationship there. So if you change that relationship, then we have a much better shot at it. And believe it or not, several states have already voted to get rid of their primaries, including Alaska in 2020. And that vote in 2020, I'm going to go to target the business people here. How many of you have heard of a woman named Mary Peltola? How many of you have heard of a woman named Sarah Palin? Mary Peltola is the person who beat Sarah Palin for the congressional seat out of Alaska. And the reason she beat Sarah Palin is they got rid of the primaries in Alaska so that you just had to appeal to the general voter, and Mary Peltola managed to edge it out. If you have a traditional system, Mary Peltola loses. Sarah Palin wins the Republican primary. It's a red state. She beats Mary Peltola. Equally compelling out of Alaska was there was a senator named Lisa Murkowski. Raise your hand if you've heard of Lisa Murkowski. Why is she well known? She won via write-in a number of years ago. Wow, Mahir knows his shit. But Lisa Murkowski was also the only Republican senator who voted to impeach Donald Trump, who was up for re-election in 22. Think about that Venn diagram. And so Trump came to exact revenge, had his hand-picked candidate to challenge Lisa Murkowski, but there was no Republican primary anymore. And so because of that, Lisa survives. If there was a Republican primary, Lisa's out. Her approval rating among Alaskan Republicans was measured at 8% after she voted to impeach Trump. She's done. But there's essentially no primary in Alaska, so she said, hey, guess what, guys? Like, most of you think I'm pretty reasonable, and she managed to edge out the Trump-endorsed challenger by 4 points. You get rid of the primaries, you get Sarah Palin out, which makes us all 2 IQ points smarter, because imagine if she'd been there and just stick a camera in her face every day and been like, Sarah, say something crazy for me. She's like, happy to, that's why I'm here. And then she'd say something crazy. Then they go to the Democrats and say, did you hear what Sarah said? And be like, oh, I'm outraged. And that's what our news would be for 2 years or 4 years. So the investment to get rid of the primaries in Alaska cost $6 million. $6 million to get Sarah Palin out, Lisa Murkowski back. And it's evergreen. You do it once, it's done forever. Imagine doing that in another 4, 5, 6 states around the country, liberate 8, 10, 12 US senators. By the way, half a dozen senators have gone up to Lisa Murkowski on the Senate floor and said, we envy you so much you don't have a primary anymore. They know the game. What you do is you actually change the incentives so that they can do the right thing, and then we have a chance for the future. This is the only way out. You all run organizations. You know people will do what you actually reward and incentivize. We're incentivizing our leaders to do the wrong things, and we have to incentivize them to do the right things as quickly as possible. And then our future will have a chance. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. I'm over here. That's right. Stage right.
Thanks, Andrew. And I know I want to get pretty quickly to audience questions and feedback, but I've known you long enough that I had a couple questions first. Right, we're 3 years later from when you ran. A lot of people, if they were a singular focus, thinks about UBI. In this world where Gen AI and AI has exploded even more, we saw sort of the numbers around the cognitive class. How do you now think about the platform? Are more people going, hey, that guy may have been on something?
The most positive thing we've done in the last several years for families was something called the Enhanced Child Tax Credit, which lowered the child poverty rate in the US from about 11% to 5% in 2021. Better educational results, better nutritional results, lower levels of spousal abuse and child abuse in those families. So of course, we celebrated and kept doing it, right? No, in America, we said, let's actually get rid of this. And then child poverty shot up from 5% to 12% again in 2022. So we've discovered ways to help kids and families, but our political system right now is too broken to actually respond to what we know works. This is what makes me so sad, Josh. And I was there lobbying for the Enhanced Child Tax Credit. I still have an organization that's doing that. And it infuriates me that we took 3 million kids, brought them out of poverty for a year, and then put them back. And that's because our political system just is not working.
So on Sunday, I did the video interview with Arthi Prabhakar in the White House. I asked her a question about, consumer confidence, that the government knows how to move at the pace that technology is moving. Obviously, there's the executive order around AI. What do you think as far as technology and the U.S. government, especially the administration, no matter if it's the past one, the present one, what do we need to do differently? Who are the people that need to be in place that really could help figure out some of these policies around technology?
I love this group, this audience so much because you all run organizations. So let's say you wanted to make sure that someone was trying to figure out how to address AI. The first thing you do is you take one point of contact and say, you are now the AI person. You're the head of the AI department. You're a cabinet secretary. So that's number one. And then number two, you would give that person some resources to have at it, maybe an agency. Those are the two steps. What's happened in real life is that Congress can't get anything done. We might run out of money on Friday. So trying to solve big problems is well beyond them. So the Biden administration said, okay, we're not going to wait for that. We're going to put this through the agencies. And that's better than nothing. I'm glad that they're doing something. But there should be a dedicated person who we actually can look to and say, hey, what is going on? And then it is their responsibility. So there should be a secretary in the cabinet. AI is going to transform everything, and we don't actually have the right approach.
So I want to ask any questions. We have some mics around here. Any questions that, from what we've heard all day, and obviously everything Andrew just talked about jobs, the economy. Ken down here has a question. Gabrielle?
First of all, thanks for being here, and thanks for your very clear-headed message. I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts about how can AI help address one of the root causes of the situation, which is people don't vote. And so if that 10% became 100%, would it look different? And if so, how could technologists help work with AI and other technologies to create the incentive systems, maybe make voting easier, whatever it might be? What are your thoughts about technology's role in increasing the vote participation?
Thank you, Ken. I love this. There's an organization called Mobile Voting, run by a guy named Bradley Tusk, who some of you know. So there is some technology that is actually just ready for prime time that could make it much, much easier for people to vote. The problem isn't the tech, and you guys probably sense this. The problem is political, regulatory, and incentives, where if you go to either party and say, hey, guys, great news. We're going to make it so everyone in your district can vote, and they're going to vote securely on their phone, you're not going to get any kind of, yeah, that's great, celebration, let's do it. You're going to get, oh, no, 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 because they actually don't want to expand the franchise. Right now, they know who's going to vote. It's a finite number. They know how to game it. They have consultants who will tell them, look, you want to manage this race, here's what you need to do. You increase the number of voters, and it becomes unpredictable, uncertain. Neither party wants that. That's the truth of it. The tech is just getting better and more mature all the time. What's behind it is the political system.
So we're not incentivized to really increase the voter count at that level?
Yeah, so I am working on this, and it's good fun. I'm going to say 3 things that may or may not encourage you, whatever. So I'm sitting before you as the co-chair of the 3rd biggest political party in the US by resources. Now, there's a very, very steep drop-off between 2 and 3. So what I said was actually not very impressive in its way. But I am now one of the preeminent authorities on how to upgrade our 2-party system and make it work for us. There are 2 major opportunities. Number 1 is the 500,000 local races around the country, 70% of which are uncontested or uncompetitive. Democrats don't care about races in rural areas. Republicans aren't contesting a lot of blue zones. So there are a ton of areas that you can actually compete in very ably, and a lot of those races are technically nonpartisan. So Forward won 5 races last week. We have 41 elected officials around the country, or mayors, Like, you can actually get headway very quickly if you go local. The other major weakness in the system, to your point, Ken, is the presidential. Because we're about to get a Biden-Trump rematch that none of us wants, because combined age 160. Because again, you have these primaries getting controlled in a particular way, but you do have an opportunity to leapfrog that. And imagine an independent primary that said, hey guys, great news, you can vote on your smartphone for Mark Cuban, The Rock, Yang, Oprah, like whoever the heck like we have as the roster. And then the legacy parties would be left saying, no, that's not real. What is real is waiting to hear what 6% of Iowans think. And you'd be like, what are you talking about? I don't care what Iowans think any other time. Like, why do I care now? So you have a massive opportunity to leapfrog the legacy parties with the tools you're describing. And I do also want to say I am a practical guy. What's funny is like I have a reputation as being a visionary, blah, blah, blah. Not, like I'm also very, very pragmatic. The most realistic way we can avoid a Biden-Trump rematch in real life is a guy named Dean Phillips, who I'd urge you all to check out. He's a 54-year-old CEO, moderate member of Congress who's challenging Joe Biden in the Democratic primary. And Joe Biden, by the numbers, is deeply vulnerable. 71% of Dems don't want him. New Hampshire is the first state to vote, and Joe has never done well there. So Dean Phillips has a better chance of upsetting Biden in the Democratic primary, in my opinion, than any of the Republican contenders do for Trump. And as you can tell, I'm not a Trump fan. I would be pumped if Nikki Haley or Chris Christie were to upset him. I see that as highly unlikely. It's actually more likely that we can upgrade the Biden part of this equation.
Final question. So obviously you have all this data on jobs. Which of the jobs are being automated away, the impact? You asked the question about family. What's the advice to your kids? As they
Dude,
think about skills.
If you saw a picture of my kids, again, like I grew up the son of immigrants, and my parents were like, you're gonna have to fight and claw for everything you have. Like my kids are such cream puffs compared to me and my brother. I look at them, I'm like, oh God, where did we go wrong? But I say to myself, it's like, yeah, it's a different time, it's a different generation. Like they're very sweet. My advice for them too. And I mean, my advice for them is the same thing that we all want for our kids. You want your kids to be high character, adaptable, resilient, happy, and able to adjust to various things. If they're that, then it'll be great. And for at least my kids, the single best thing I can do for them is try and get them to be good at team sports. Because if you're good at team sports, then you actually get all those qualities I just described. You're adaptable, resilient, positive, can work with others.
And exposure to technology, are they?
They're already overexposed, man.
Yeah.
Like our kids just gravitate towards screens and just love on them. And so people who think, oh, I need to get my kids exposed to screens so they understand the tools of the future, in my opinion, that is not going to be their problem. If anything, we should be pushing in the other direction.
So in closing, if people hear, you asked a lot of the business owners that, we talk about change. People talk about what is the outcome that can come from an event. What's your recommendation, how people here get involved, sort of help, sort of be a catalyst for the change, we've been talking about?
This is the place to be because you all are building the future. There's no reason we have to accept the future that is being presented to us. Whether it is this Biden-Trump rematch that I think is a disaster, whether it's a political system that does not answer to our needs. I mean, I know you all are smart. You all are like me, where you look up and you say, okay, my business makes sense, this world makes sense, politics does not make sense, it's icky, and so let's let it just flounder around, and I'll make great things happen for my enterprise. Unfortunately, a lot of the biggest problems of this era require a government to have its act together. And this group of people actually has the wherewithal to change things. If you all don't decide to change things, they're not going to change. But if you decide to change things, we can 100% change them. You know, $6 million to get rid of Sarah Palin and get Lisa Murkowski in Evergreen, that's a freaking steal. You know, the same ballot initiative is on the ballot in Nevada, Idaho, probably Arizona, maybe Montana this cycle, 24. People ask me how much it costs to save American democracy. I'll tell you, it's $100 to $200 million. Because you get that ballot initiative up in 5 states, you liberate 10 US senators, and then you have a chance. You know, this is in a context where we're going to spend $8 to $10 billion hating on each other in the same cycle. You know, like if you have a dysfunctional system, just keep pumping resources in and be like, oh, it's not working. It's so dumb. We deserve better, and we can build better for ourselves.
Well, Andrew, thank you for